The following message is by Pastor John Piper. More information from Desiring God is available at www.desiringgod.org.
In April of 1831, Charles Simeon was 71 years old. He had been the pastor of Trinity Church in Cambridge for 49 years. And he was asked by his friend Joseph Gurney how he had endured and surmounted the great opposition that had been his portion for so many years. And this was his response. My dear brother, we must not mind a little suffering for Christ's sake. When I am getting through a hedge, if my head and shoulders are safely through, I can bear the pricking of my legs. Let us rejoice in the remembrance that our holy head has surmounted all his suffering and triumphed over death. Let us follow him patiently. We shall soon be partakers of his victory. And so I entitled the message, Brothers, we must not mind a little suffering. And I have a very definite aim biblically in what I want to achieve in the next hour, and that is to be used of God to strengthen you to obey Romans 12:12, which simply says, be patient in tribulation. That's my goal. You can write it down. I want you to go out of here stronger than you were when you came in, to be patient in tribulation. I want you to see that persecution and opposition and slander and danger and weakness and self-recrimination and disappointment are the normal portion of a faithful pastoral ministry. And I want you to see it in the life of a man who was a sinner, was a pastor, and who did not allow himself to become embittered by years and years of entrenched opposition to his ministry in his own church and in the university where he served. Because what I have found in my own experience is that my own personal disappointments and discouragements find resources for endurance when I have before me a model of one who endured. I just find tremendous strength flowing to me if I can put before me in my mind's eye somebody who incurred or experienced what I'm experiencing and more and held on or even thrived in the midst of it. Another thing that makes me so drawn to this issue and this man is that I think we live in a very emotionally fragile time. And I am a child of my times, much more than I wish I were. When I'm honest with myself, the things I hate about my culture, I see evidences of in myself. By emotionally fragile, I mean that we are easily hurt. We pout easily. We mope easily. When I say we, I mean the American culture today, inside and outside the church. We break easily. Our marriages break easily. Our faith breaks easily. Our happiness breaks easily. Our commitment to the ministry and to the church breaks easily. We are easily disheartened and discouraged. We seem to have very few resources and little capacity for thriving in criticism and opposition. The typical emotional response in a church where your people reject your ideas is, well, if that's the way they feel about me, then I'll just find another church. That's the typical, I think, emotional response. And we don't see a lot of models of people who live out the rugged words, count it all joy, brothers, when you fall into various trials. I think that when historians write about the character traits of the latter quarter of the 20th century, words like commitment, constancy, tenacity, endurance, patience, resolve, perseverance won't be on the list at all, not even at the bottom. And at the top of the list will be an all-consuming interest in self-esteem. Subpoints under that list will be self-assertiveness and self-enhancement and self-realization. And if you think you're not a child of your culture, then I suggest that you just test yourself and ask how emotionally you respond when significant people in your life reject your ideas. Now, we need help here. We are surrounded in a society of emotionally fragile quitters. And a good bit of that ethos is in you and me. And therefore, I have found that one of the weapons against being that way is to nuzzle up close to people who aren't that way, even if they're dead. And most of them are. Be imitators of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. Hebrews 6:12. I want to give you a man this morning I think is worthy of your imitation because he through faith and patience, those are his own words at times, endured and inherited the promise. All right, my outline is to just briefly unfold a little bit of his life and times, then to turn to his trials, and finally to the resources by which he endured those trials. So first of all, a little bit about his life and times. If you didn't get it when you walked in, a sheet back there outlining his life with a picture and bibliography will save some time. So I'm going to be very brief here. He was born the year after Jonathan Edwards died. That's the best place for me to position him in the world history. The Wesleys in Whitfield were still alive and kicking, and the Methodist awakening was in full swing. For 77 years he lived, from 1758 to 1836. That's through the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and right up to the invention of the telegraph and the railroad. To give you a little flavor of the atmosphere in which he lived. His father was a wealthy attorney and not a believer, and to Simeon's great grief, never became a believer, though his brothers did under his influence. We know nothing about his mother. Presumably, she died before he knew her. He went when he was 7 years old to Eton College. It was a boarding school, and he was there for 12 years. He was known as a homely, fancy-dressing, athletic show-off. The atmosphere of Eton in those days was so degenerate that he once said, the most amazing indictment I've read of any school ever, he said, I would be tempted to take the life of my son before I let him see the vice I saw at Eton. Isn't that awesome? Well, here he is without a mom, never going home, unbelieving dad, growing up in a wicked 12 years boarding school. At 19, he goes to Cambridge. His father enables him to get into King's College. Cambridge is not much better. It's a very dark place. Even after he was converted, he didn't know another believer, he said, personally on the campus for almost 3 years. It was destitute of evangelical faith in those days. The Wesleyan revival hadn't touched Cambridge, Moule said, for some reason. Let me tell you about his conversion. This is a great story. This is what I focused on last Sunday night with the people here. 3 days after he arrived at Cambridge, the provost, William Cook, sent word to him and the few other freshmen they would all have to partake of the Lord's Supper in 3 weeks. And this absolutely sent him into consternation because, for some reason, he was afraid to eat the Lord's Supper as a sinner. And he began to do everything he could think of to make amends for his rotten life and to read about the Lord's Supper and about God. He took a book called The Whole Duty of Man, which William Cooper said was nothing but self-righteous and pharisaical lumber, which